Um, I am here today with Derek Strokon. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yes. And I got introduced to this man through Trunus Goggins, who everybody knows by now. But we're just here to talk about his book, Human Being Human. And we're going to touch on his other ones. And he and Trunus are also working on another one that we may just chat about for a
Maybe
second.
we'll open book.
We got to definitely talk about how that book came about. It was kind of hilarious. So we're going to just talk about these books today and get to know Derek a little bit because that's what I love to do. And yeah, so Derek, I want you to start with telling people, first of all, you are from Canada.
I am.
So you
Yeah.
are coming from us from further up north than I already am because I'm in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So you are further north than me. And where in Canada are you again?
So I'm in a little village called Sun Peaks, and
Okay.
that's in British Columbia. So
Okay.
essentially, if you dropped a pin in the middle of the forest, in the
Oh, wow.
smack dab middle of our province, I'm in a town of 1,400 people, but we are the second largest ski resort in Canada outside of Whistler Blackcomb. So
Okay.
little small
So
town.
very,
I'm fortunate. I can put my skis on out my front door, and I'm on the chairlift in 2 minutes. So
oh, nice. But very touristy, I would imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. 99% of our traffic is tourism, um,
Yeah.
which is great.
I
It's
would,
beautiful. It brings a really multicultural,
yeah.
multinational, international feel to the village. So
Yeah, and if it's anything like around here, I mean, we haven't had a lot of snow.
right.
So ours have had to make snow this year
Okay.
because
Yeah,
we
so
haven't
we
had
have missed the
any.
season. So
Yeah, we've had a very dry winter, and so it's funny because you go back. We have a ski place that's right off the highway, and it's funny
right,
because you go past it and like there's all this snow,
right.
and then there's no snow anywhere else up here. So
Yeah.
it's so odd. But no, I love that. And I have a few other people that I know that are from Canada that have been authors in some books that I've done. So I love talking to you guys and just getting a little bit of a sense of what's north. I've been to
Right.
Canada one time. My husband and I drove up
Yeah.
for our anniversary just to get away. And honestly, it was a breath of fresh air because my husband extended his phone plan, but I
Yeah.
did not. And it was so nice to just not deal with my
Right.
phone for like
Yeah.
5 days. It was wonderful. I did not miss it at all. Um, I was like, I don't need my phone. I'm good.
Yeah.
So, human being human.
Hmm.
Okay, let's not even start there. Let's start with who you are
Yeah.
because a lot of people that in my circle don't know who you are.
For
So
sure.
let's start there. Who's Derek?
Who is Derek? Isn't that a good question?
That is.
That's a good one that leads into the book as well.
Yes.
Um, I think it's isn't that I think honestly that's the lifelong struggle is figuring out
Oh,
who we are.
that's
Um, and I've been on a really interesting journey over the last 4 years.
mm,
So I was doing everything that I thought I was supposed to do. I
oh,
had the job in finance, we had the income, we had the big house, we had the hot tub that hung on the edge of the cliff. We had all of the things that the world markets to you that you're supposed to have.
yeah.
And it wasn't the contentment level that I was seeking. I was, my friend Katie McPhee, she refers to it as um, that she was climbing the wrong ladder,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so in February of 2022, I made a dramatic shift. I left my corporate career of 16 years, um, living what I refer to as that hero culture life, where you're doing all the things to impress the people who don't care with money you don't
Mm, mm,
have. And making that realization was a big part of us moving to the mountain. It was a big part of us significantly downsizing our spend, but
wow.
significantly improving our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that fortunately was what led me to do my TEDx talk in January of 2023. Um, and the story I share really is a lot of learning that I learned from my son. Um,
Okay.
my son essentially has never worn a Halloween costume.
Mm,
And my whole talk was about, you're supposed to want to wear the costume.
mm.
And his response to me was, well, why can't I just be me?
Oh,
And I'm like, dude, that is the learning. That is the thing. Like my kid who was 2
wow.
wanted to know why he had to pretend to be something that he wasn't. And when you use that as a microcosm for our entire world right now,
Yeah.
right? Like, especially the political climate that we are in globally as we
Yeah.
go through this, and we're not going to touch on that because that's a dangerous one. But just the power of just being yourself and understanding that you are enough just the way that you are. Yet
Mm,
our hero culture world trains us to live in this space where we're always continually pursuing more, where what you have is never good enough. If you have a Volkswagen, you should have an Audi. If you have an Audi, you should have a Porsche. If you have a Porsche, you should have a Lamborghini.
yeah.
All the same car, all owned by the same company, and the same hoses they use in a Volkswagen, they use in an Audi.
Ugh,
But
yeah.
marketing and where I attribute this back to is Star Wars.
Mm,
And when George Lucas was writing Star Wars, he was good friends with a guy by the name of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell, very, very famous for writing and kind of listing out the hero's journey.
mm,
And George Lucas, when he wrote Star Wars, the whole idea was to use this hero's journey as the model for how you structure a story.
okay.
And that, the history of this goes back to the Greek tragedies. It's an incredible way for humans to learn lessons. And it follows the pattern to say, normal Joe faces a crisis, falls and hits rock bottom, goes through this painful evolution on their rise to greatness, faces struggles and challenges along the way, and then they return back to their original space as a changed human, and they share that lesson with everybody else in the village.
Mm,
And that pattern has become so popular that it has actually changed the way that we think, and it's changed the way that we treat each other.
yeah.
Right? In the book, I talk about the example of my wife and I walk past her and I say I love you, and she says I love you too. And our kids are really well behaved, and they're incredible when they're with other kids' parents, and they're pretty good when they're with us.
Yeah.
And if I share that story, nobody really cares. Kind of boring. Nobody gets excited about it.
Yeah.
But when I add in that I had a relationship in the past,
Mm,
and my ex had a drug issue. I say tongue in cheek, she had a lot more sex than I did when we were
mm,
dating,
mm,
um, by quite a large margin. Um, and she'd always say, "You're the only good thing in my life, and I'll never do this again, and I'm only going to be devoted to you," and all of these traumatic things. And I'd say,
yeah.
"Okay, great, I'll be your hero." And finally, I gave up. And then I met my wife, and I say, "I love you," and she says, "I love you back." And our kids are really well behaved, and they're great when they're with other kids' parents.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that's a good story.
Right.
But why do we rely on chaos and crisis as the superhero part of the story? Because that's the really terrible part of the story.
Yeah.
The great part of the story is that I love my wife and she loves me back. And I
Yeah.
say, I love you. And most of the time, she now just goes, yes, dear, right? Because I say it all the time. But that's the perfect part of the story, and living in this space of calm and contentment was a massive realization. So I get to loop back to your question of going like, who is Derek?
Yeah.
um Derek's really changed,
Mm,
right? The Derek of today compared to the Derek of 5 years ago compared to the Derek of 20 years ago, has gone through this dramatic evolution, but this realization that life is the objective of life is is not to have all the things,
Mm-hmm.
right? We really should be pursuing less.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean don't have goals and don't have ambition and don't have drive.
Right.
But Randy Molland, who's one of the co-authors in Human Being Human, I had 9 amazing contributors to this book, and they all shared a chapter. And
Awesome.
Randy talks about, if you want to be the happiest $1 million income earner on the planet, build yourself a business that makes you $2 million and give away
Mm,
half.
nice.
So this drive for income, this drive for success, and that it's okay to want nice things,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to begin from a basis of understanding that where you are is actually enough,
Yeah.
right? The goal, the sacred hierarchy that we speak of in the book, um, comparing that to Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, that we need shelter, we need food, we need physical safety,
Yeah.
but above that, all we need is self-acceptance.
Mm.
And if you can get to a point of self-acceptance, you actually can avoid all the other levels. Every other level in Maslow's hierarchy is they're just wants,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not needs, they're just wants.
Right.
So that's I guess me, and I think like this book is such a investigation and a deep dive into my personal journey in hopes that we can unlock the secret to this for other people to follow this same pattern. And the book doesn't follow a set structure, it doesn't follow the hero's journey.
Yeah.
It's just a whole lot of different chapters and ideas. There is no
Wow.
completion, there is no end to the story, because there is no end to your story continues. My learning will
Yes.
continue above and beyond the things that Trueness and I will be able to share. It's kind of a little teaser,
Yes.
is the evolution of what's happening in Human Being Human. I would say Human Being Human is the prerequisite
Okay.
to the book that Trueness and I are bringing to the world.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, there's so much to unpack there. Um, no, okay, first of all, I love that your son just wanted to be himself.
Yeah,
How many of us as adults don't want to be us? How
yeah,
many of us would rather be the person beside us?
yeah,
And your son was just content and would wanted to be him.
yeah,
And that is beautiful in itself. And I mean, people say all the time, out of the mouths of babes.
right.
And I'm always watching my grandchildren. I mean, they're visiting right now, and the things that they say,
Yeah,
and I glean from that because they don't know any better.
right.
They, especially the 3-year-old, 3-year-old, the 6-year-old who's going 6, going on 20,
Yeah,
but the things that they say are brutally honest,
right.
brutally. I mean, they don't know any other way. They
Yeah,
haven't gone through all the mess that we've gone through, and they see the world in a different way, and it's completely honest, it's completely pure. It hasn't gotten mucked up with all the baggage
yeah,
and all the stuff that you go through. And I tell people all the time, if you have kids around you, pay attention.
right.
You can learn a lot just by watching a kid play for an hour.
Yeah,
And especially one that likes to play and likes to imagine and likes to plays with their toys and talks and stuff like that. Just watching them play is amazing to me.
yeah,
And the things that they think up while they're playing, and it, number one, it shows you what they see on a
yeah,
daily basis, and it shows you what you need to add to what
right.
they see, because
Yeah,
there's things that are
they
missing in there.
yeah, they haven't been indoctrinated
Yes.
with the cultural norm
Yes.
and the cultural expectation.
Yeah.
If you go back, there's a brilliant European study done by a nurse. She worked in end of life care in
Yes.
hospice.
Yes.
And one of her
Yes.
favorite questions was to
Yep.
ask, what is, not her favorite question, but one of her deeper questions was,
Yes.
what has been your biggest regret?
Yes.
And the number one regret of the dying is that I wish I would have lived a life more true to myself
Mm-hmm.
instead of being somebody that I thought I was expected to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and it's not that hard. This is the cool thing is it's not that hard to make this shift.
That's right.
This shift is easy. If I look
Yes.
at my situation at 44 years old,
Mm-hmm.
making the great income, right?
Yeah.
Somewhat close to three times the national average income.
Mm.
And I walked away from
Yeah.
that at 44 years old. And I
Mm.
started again at zero.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredibly hard,
Yes.
but
Yes.
not difficult.
Right.
And when one of the other concepts that I talk about in Human Being Human is this idea of tipping time. And
Mm.
with tipping time, we use the kind of the visual of taking an hourglass and then tipping that hourglass sideways.
Mm.
And when the hourglass is pouring, we see all the grains of sand that are falling through the neck
Yeah.
of the hourglass, and all of those grains of sand, it looks like a stream.
Mm. Yeah.
It looks like they're all connected.
Right.
But when we tip time, we actually have the ability to separate the past and the future.
Nice.
And we have this ability to go understanding that all of these grains of sand, although they're touching, they're not connected.
Right.
That there is no link between the past and the future. There's a pattern, but that pattern is created only in our brain.
Right.
The world doesn't understand a pattern,
Yeah.
right? The crazy part is that as humans, we try and create patterns out of random events because that's how our brain organizes thought.
Yeah.
But the world doesn't work that way.
Right.
But we'll go, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and oh my God, and I'm in a slump, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, or when everything's going incredibly well. The truth of the matter is the world doesn't care. The universe doesn't care.
No.
It just throws events at you. And
Yes.
so what we can do by tipping time is we create that separation between the past and the future. We understand that really all of these grains of sand, even though they're touching, they're not connected, which makes every other grain of sand at the top, everything else in your future becomes accessible immediately.
Yeah.
um, the second layer of getting into this, and this is kind of the deep part of the understanding, I think, for the book, is that in this space, our conversation today,
Yeah.
nothing's actually happening. You're sitting in your house, I'm sitting in my house. You're going to go play with your grandkids after this. I'm going to go
Yeah.
get a haircut because I'm well overdue. And nothing, like in the immediate moment, nothing happens.
Right.
However, that's the only place that things can occur.
Mm.
So there's an incredible duality and it's conflicting, but if we understand that these things actually are together,
Yeah.
that the world happens one moment at a time. We
Yes.
can't access the future. We can't access the past.
Yeah.
We can access the present, which
Yep.
the old story of that's why it's the gift.
Yes.
But taking advantage of this moment, I could create anything that I want to create in this exact moment. And it's been a wild journey. So I'm 3 years into this. I've written 3 books. I'm on book number 4. I did my TEDx. I've started 2 companies. I bought into a third company. I started a clothing line 2.5 weeks ago, just
Oh, fun.
because. And I talk to so many people and go, Derek, you've done so much.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think so. I've done a lot in this 3 years,
Yeah.
but I didn't do a whole lot in the other 16.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So just because all of these things are happening in this space of compression
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm achieving any more than anybody else can.
Right.
Right? If we want to meet,
Yeah.
you want to pick any celebrity, there's a
Mm-hmm.
path to meet that celebrity if that's your thing.
Right.
I had a post on LinkedIn, and this was about a year and a half ago, and I said the secret to success is location, location, location. And I said if you know where you want to live, and it's funny because this happens all the time at the resort. This happened last week on the chairlift. And I'll speak to tourists and they'll go, "Oh my God, you live there? You live here? I would do anything to like have your life,
Yeah, right.
to live where you live." And I'm like, "Well, then you should move here."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, if only I could, but I've got," and then the list goes on, the excuses, right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
talk about, excuses build monuments of nothingness. So the more
Yeah.
excuses that you hold inside you, the less you're going to change.
Yeah.
But if you want to do something, just go do it.
Right.
And this ties in a little bit to the Success Bible, which I know you're a big fan of. Um, that book, I don't want to focus too much on that today, but I wrote that book in 24 hours.
Right.
And it went from concept at about 9 a.m. on Friday morning, and by 3 a.m. on Saturday morning, it was live on Amazon.
That's awesome.
And there's a hope maybe we have another conversation about that. I
Yeah,
don't want to. I
absolutely.
kind of
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
we'll tease that one.
Yeah.
Everything is achievable. Everything is easy
Yeah.
to go and do.
Yeah.
There's challenge with accomplishing things. Absolutely, we have to find out exactly what we want. But going back to location, location, location,
Yeah.
you just pick where you want to live.
Yeah.
That's actually the best place to start, to go, "Oh, I would love to live in
Right.
Cabo St. Luca.
Yeah,
I would
right.
love to live in Hawaii. I would love to live in Alaska or at a ski resort." Well, then just move there,
Yeah.
and then you find out along the way how to solve all the other problems.
Right.
And when you break it down, it sounds so simple. And everyone's like, "Oh, if it was only that easy." Well, it is, right? Just go. And then
Yeah.
begin your life and do it. But it comes from the understanding of tipping time. It comes from the
Yeah.
understanding of the power of nothing.
Yeah.
That in this moment where nothing happens, everything's happening.
Yeah.
And it puts everything in the world within reach. And
Yeah. And we can talk ourselves out of anything.
yeah.
Yeah, we really can. And we have such a a reality mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Where's like, okay, well, this is what I would like, but here's the reality of my situation.
Right.
And this is what, and I love that you've done all this in 4 years. I mean, out of COVID, I built my publishing business, and
Right.
I'm where I am today because the world shut down.
Right.
And I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
And I was left with, now what? And
Right.
the lady that I was working with at the time, who was my pastor at the time, we started her business, and out of her business came my business.
Right.
And we built something, and now I am on my own doing this. And it's like, how did I do this in 4 years? How did I get to where I am? And it's just because this is what I wanted to do, and it just built on top of each other. And I met people, like Trueness, and I met the right people, came into my life at the right time, and I said yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You have to say yes. You have to take that step. You have to do it. You can't like just sit there and go, well, this would be nice.
Right.
And nothing comes to you without you taking that step forward.
Right.
Right.
So you're either not actually that interested in doing it.
Exactly.
Or you haven't learned how accessible it is.
Right. Right.
Because,
Yeah.
oh, I would love to live here. Well, you probably wouldn't.
Right.
Right? Like, you probably like your life in Toronto or your life in New York.
Yeah.
And having, right? We have very few restaurants. We have a couple coffee shops, but
yeah.
Everybody loves coming here on vacation. The reality is most people don't want to live here, but they'll say, "Oh, I would do anything to have a life like yours."
Yeah.
Well, you actually wouldn't do anything.
Right.
Because if you wanted it, you'd have it.
Exactly.
If we go to buyer's mentality,
mm-hmm.
that if there's something you want to buy, just go buy it.
Right.
Go on Amazon and go buy it. Go to your local store and go buy it.
Yeah.
So we understand that part. But if you want something in your life, then go get it.
Yeah.
And and the simplicity of it is that, unfortunately, this is how we tie back to hero culture, and that hero culture has indoctrinated us into this mindset to say we're so addicted to chaos and crisis that
Yeah.
we don't make a shift in our lives, right? This was the
Yeah.
first question that I tried to solve writing my TEDx, with my coach, was why don't we change when things are good,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
You take Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great, and the opening line of that book is, good is the enemy of great.
Mm.
But why do we wait till we hit the wall at
Yep.
500 miles an hour before making a significant shift?
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
but it's crazy when we think about it.
Yeah.
But everyone gets tuppy. We've been so indoctrinated. Every single movie. I watched rented Top Gun 2 with my son whenever it came out on video. We watched it
Yeah.
3 times in 48 hours. It's brilliant.
Oh, yes.
What an escape. But it reinforces this crazy notion that we have to have crisis in order to change.
Right.
And everybody goes, Derek, what was your catalyst moment that you
Mm.
were able to make this massive shift in your life? And there's supporting reasons,
Right.
but we just changed,
Yeah.
right? Like, there I can pin it on a few events,
Yeah.
but you just make a shift. Writing the book in 24 hours was just a decision.
Right.
Human being human was 5 days of writing.
Nice.
Um, and I put myself in a container. We had 32 authors all together, and we wrote 24 hours a day for a week.
Wow.
And I still slept. I would go to bed at 8.
Yeah.
When I put the kids to bed, I would get up at 3:45. I would write from 4 till 7. I'd go on a coaching call. Then I'd write from about 8 o'clock till about 11, go on another call, another support call.
Yeah.
And I wrote the book in 4.5 days.
Wow.
And it sounds cool, but it's not that complicated.
No.
Is you just go do it. And
Right.
I maintained my normal schedule. I maintained my coaching business. I maintained eating dinner with my family.
Awesome.
But you just make shifts in your life to create. And by understanding tipping time, by understanding the power of nothing, by understanding philanthropy and giving, and all the other stories from the beautiful, amazing other contributors to this story, that they added their perspectives, right? Randy,
What do you say to somebody that says they have issue making themselves a priority?
yeah, then decide what you want.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
I was a mom.
Right.
My focus was my kids.
Yeah.
And it became it honestly became it took me a long time to realize it, but it was my single focus.
Right.
My kids were my life. I would live and die for them, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they were my only source of joy. They were my only they were it for me.
Yeah.
And I realized I was living for them, and there was nothing there was no me outside of them.
Sure.
So then that's when, I was in my 40s
Yeah.
when I snapped out of that.
Right.
And then I had to figure out, who am I?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And figuring that out was not easy. It was hard. Absolutely. Like you said, it was hard, but it wasn't difficult. I had to focus on myself for a change,
Yeah.
which is not easy in this world.
No.
If you are focusing on yourself, you are selfish. You are, and it's but I love that you say just do it. Why quit coming up with an excuse,
Yeah.
and step out and do it regardless.
Yeah.
you can have
Going to
regrets or
pretend that
whatever.
every excuse is invalid.
Yeah. Right. Right.
With enough drive and determination and
Yeah.
conviction,
Yeah.
the excuses are all invalid. And
True.
like this brings into this other concept of calm and contentment,
Yeah.
that we have this addiction to chaos and crisis,
Hmm.
right? We love it. It's great. Great
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
exciting, traumatic drama.
Right. Right.
When really the true purpose of being human is to find contentment
Yeah.
and to be happy. You create happiness from contentment,
Yeah.
being in the space that you are.
Yeah.
And it is not an excuse for complacency,
Right.
but it is an understanding that right now in this moment, everything is just the way it is.
Hmm.
And it may not be the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Right.
And I think like that's one of the things that frustrates me the most is you are exactly where you're meant to be. Well, you're not.
Right.
You just are where you are.
You are where you have settled.
Like take somebody who they lost their home, they're an alcoholic and they're living in a bush, and you go
Right.
tell them you're exactly where you're meant to be right now. Right? They're gonna stop you
Right.
in the mouth
Yeah.
with their Jack Daniels bottle
Yeah. Right.
because that's not where they're meant to be. It's just where they are.
Right.
And that's an
Yeah.
extreme
Yeah.
example, but you're not where you're meant to be necessarily
Yeah.
as you transition through to the you that you are becoming.
Yeah. I love that.
You are just where you're at.
Hmm.
And if we can layer in this and understand in that space that you're accepting of this, and then you can find contentment in the
Hmm.
space that you are,
Yeah.
you no longer have to worry about having chaos and crisis in your life as the catalyst for change, because we understand that calm, the
Yeah.
old Navy saying, that slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Mm.
When we can eliminate the overwhelm in
Yeah.
our mindset
Yeah.
to live in a space of contentment, understanding that everything is achievable and everything in the entire world is available to you at any moment, you no longer have to live in crisis.
Right.
You no longer require chaos to create significant shift. You get
Yeah.
to live in a space of calm.
Yeah.
You get to live in a space of contentment.
Yeah.
And then you go out and you pick and choose anything in this world that you want and you go grab it
Yeah.
because it's waiting there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love, and living in the moment
Mm-hmm.
is such a huge thing. And there's so many people that are so busy. They're so busy. And like you said, they thrive on that chaos. They thrive on the crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and they are missing, first of all, they're missing half their life. They're missing
Yeah.
the people around them. They're missing their children growing up. They're missing, and that is one thing that I found. You know, you talked about happiness. Um, One of the things over the last couple of years that I've really focused on is finding actual joy.
Mm-hmm.
Is you can be happy, sure. I can be happy on the surface. I can pretend that I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, smile on my face. I'm good.
Yeah.
But what am I here? And it's like, am I happy? And do I have absolute internal joy coming out of me?
Right.
And when you realize that no, you don't,
Yeah.
then you have to realize what's that thing that gets you actual pure joy
Yeah.
and that contentment in that. And if you can find that,
Yeah.
you will thrive in that.
Yeah.
And you've got, I think, and I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, especially like you left a job where you were making money and you were doing the things and you stepped out of that. But I tell my kids all the time, if you do not like your job, please leave. Find another job first, but do not stay in your job for 20 years just to survive,
Yeah.
because it's not worth it. Yeah, you're providing for your family and that's what you're supposed to do. It's, that's your job as a man. You
Yeah.
take care of your family, but there's no reason to be miserable while you're doing it. There's a way to have that, but those little moments, like you said, we're in a moment right here. We're
Yeah.
creating a moment right here. And we create moments every second of the day.
Yeah.
And how many of those are missed moments that you don't even, I'm so aware of that now. And in this day and age where the phone is like here all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it drives me crazy. And I try my best when I do have my grands to not be on my phone hardly ever.
Yeah.
Of course I still have a business to run. I still have, so I pay attention to it,
Yeah.
but it's not front and center the whole time they're here,
Yeah.
because I don't want to miss those moments
Right.
of them growing up.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that when my kids were little, cell phones weren't as big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't miss those moments. I still did because I worked a lot, but
Right.
creating those moments and just figuring out what you want to do with your life and then stepping into that
Yeah.
is is terrifying
Yeah.
for sure. It can be scary, but taking that step and just doing it is can be one of the most gratifying things in the world.
Yeah.
And it feels good. You get those endorphins when you're doing what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And we thrive on those endorphins. And it
Yeah.
just it helps you from head to toe.
Right.
So I love the book. I've gotten to skim through it. I haven't gotten to like, I don't have time. I have to make the time. Like you
Yeah.
said, if I want to do it, I'm going to sit down and read the book.
Right.
Um, I do, now that it's getting nicer out and I can actually sit out on my balcony,
Yeah.
I will go do that. But yeah, what is something like
Mm-hmm.
with your book? Who is somebody that absolutely positively needs to pick this book up?
Yeah. Great question. Um, I needed to read this book.
Really?
The me of 5 years ago needed to read this book.
Yeah.
Um, it would have opened up so much awareness that
Yeah.
I had to learn firsthand. And
Mm,
if we go like the greatest way in the world to gain knowledge is to read somebody else's story, because
yeah.
you can take my last 30 years of sales experience and you can digest it. It's an easy read.
Yeah.
It's not a complicated read. You can get through this book in a day and a half. So
Nice.
you get to digest all of my learning and the learning from the 9 other co-authors who shared each a chapter in the book,
Yeah.
and you get to consume that in a day and a half. But I think, to identify who I was 5 years ago was that individual who thought that I knew what I was supposed to be doing because I was following the cultural expectation of living in a world of chaos and crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I had the job, we had the house, we had the cash flow, and there are going to be a ton of people who hear that sentence and go, "Oh, well, good for you."
Mm.
Right? Or it was
Yeah.
easy for you to shift
Mm.
because you had these
Yeah.
other things to prepare you for the
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah.
Well, I would welcome them to call me and I will share them how much challenge there was through this transition.
Yeah.
Um, but the person who needs to read this is that person who's going, you know what? It doesn't, maybe to use Katie's line of, if you've realized that you're climbing somebody else's ladder.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Katie's story, she shares that, her car overturned in Toronto on a freeway, a 5-lane freeway. She rolled it several
Mm.
times. And the first phone call she made was to her president of her company because she was the executive VP. The first call she made was to the president of the company saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. Make sure that you get through these 7 points." And he's like, "Well, why aren't you going to be there?" And she's like, "Well, I just rolled my vehicle." And she made that call before she called her family.
Wow.
And if you're that person who's living this hero culture life where you're doing everything that the world is telling you that you're supposed to do, and you're understanding that this is probably not what you want to do, then you need to make the shift. You need to
Yeah.
read the book to understand that it is complicated in
Yeah.
action, but
Yeah.
not complicated in concept.
Yeah.
And it is a ton of work.
Yeah.
But I am living a life now that, had you told me that this was going to be me
Yeah.
in 3.5 years,
Yeah.
I would go, man, you're crazy.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. Like, we chose to move to where we live. I have access, I'm going to ski to my haircut
Oh my
after this.
gosh.
Um, and it sounds so foreign. My
Yeah.
kids go to school at the only ski in, ski out elementary school in the world.
Oh my gosh.
So literally take the lift to school, literally ski home at the end of the day. It is
Oh
the
wow.
only ski in, ski out elementary school in the world. Um, and it sounds so crazy,
Yeah.
but if that's the kind of life you want, then go get it
Right.
and figure out all the details
Yeah.
after. Location is a
Yeah.
beautiful place to start.
Mm.
When I get to live in a place where people escape to for a week or 2 weeks a year
Yeah.
because I chose to live here. Yet it costs me the same to
Mm.
pay for my home for the year as it does for them to rent the place for 2 weeks. So it's all achievable. Have we absolutely dramatically
Mm.
changed our life?
I
Yes.
bet.
Would I be a
Yeah.
3-time author, TEDx speaker had I not made that shift? No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known that that was an opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's been just honestly, Nicole, it's been an incredible journey. It's been incredible learning how accessible the world is. It's why I launched this clothing line 2 weeks ago, and it's got a bit of a political kind of vibe to it. It's more about celebrating Canadian pride, and there's
Yeah.
been a kind of a inbound attack on our sovereignty, and none of the
Yeah.
Canadians are very happy about that. So I'm
Yeah.
like, well, why not launch a clothing line? Okay, great. Well,
Sure.
it's making money. It's crazy, but
Well,
it's
yeah.
it's supporting Canadians, and it's pride. Honestly, the cool part is about 25% of our sales are coming from Americans who are going, we want to help support because we don't believe in the
Yeah.
the
Right.
attack that's
Yeah.
happening from a global lens. But it's all achievable. Starting my
Yeah.
consulting company, I just started it. Starting our merchant processing company, we just started it. Getting involved with, my other project is a company called Polar Cold Caps. And what we do is we produce a product that helps patients keep their hair as they go through chemo.
Yes. I
And it's a
remember you mentioning that. That's
this
awesome.
product needs to get out into the marketplace. I've been building the game plan for this for a year and a half.
Yeah.
We are going to be going from kind of startup phase to launch phase very, very shortly, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Um, but the company's been around for 11 years. We just haven't hit the traction point that we
Right.
need, but we're
Yeah.
uncovering the relationships that we need to uncover in order to bring this product to market on a much larger scale.
Yeah. And I
And it's
love that.
incredible to know that you actually can keep your hair as you go through chemo.
Which is one of the most devastating things
Yeah,
for a lot of people when they go through,
right.
especially women.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
98%
hard.
of our clients are women.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say my objective with that company is I can't stop the cancer, but what we're able to do is to have patients walk down the street without getting a second look.
Yes.
And that's the empowerment side of that business. But I would never have uncovered this opportunity. I never would have built my partnership.
Yeah.
And we never would have been in this space if I didn't
Yeah.
start to answer the question of why don't we change when things are good. And I think this is a really great place for us to kind of put a
Yeah.
bow on this,
Absolutely.
is that
Absolutely.
you don't need to wait for that moment of crisis. You don't need to wait till
Yes.
you hit the wall at 500 miles an hour. If there is a
Right.
significant shift that you feel that you should make, just make it,
Yes.
because it's all achievable. And unlocking the power of tipping time, understanding the power of nothing,
Yes.
understanding philanthropy and giving, and how the more that we get, more that we give, the more that we get.
Yeah.
All of these pieces, these things that, Giselle, who shares her story about being a millennial,
Yeah.
we talk about millennial guilt, right? There are so few millennials who want to take over mom and dad's business, but there's an incredible amount of millennial guilt because they were the
Yeah.
ones at the cottage when mom and dad were still working. They were on the boat at the cottage when mom and dad were still running the business. But now they don't want to
Yeah.
take over the business because they don't want that same hero culture mentality. They don't want the 80 hours a
Yeah.
week. They're understanding. Take Tim Ferriss's comment about living life as a series of mini retirements.
Mm.
He wrote that in the 4 Hour Work Week, and I don't remember when that was published, but it was well over
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Wow.
And that message still holds true. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's who Derek is. If we go back to answering your original question,
I love it. No, this has been amazing. I mean, people need to get all of your books, honestly. I think the wealth of knowledge that you gained from making that shift
yeah,
is going to help everyone just in general. I mean, even if they're not looking for a shift, I feel like they can better the way that they are doing life
yeah,
with every one of your books. And yeah, I mean, I think the culture that we're in now, it's harder to make those shifts. It's harder to step out and just do the things that you really want to do because there's those critics. I mean, everybody criticizes everybody else. Nobody looks at their own issues, that kind of
mm,
thing, because it's easier. It's easier to look at somebody else's issues
right,
and talk to them about their issues, right?
yeah,
So I think your books are just amazing, and the one that Trunis and you were putting together is just going to be another level, and I'm so excited to start getting that. People are just going to have to watch social media, watch everything to look for that book with y'all's name on it. But I am so happy that we got to spend this time together and just chat about your book. And yes, we are going to definitely have to do another one and talk all about the Success Bible and
yeah.
what the point of that one was, because it's really cool. But thank you so much for spending
Oh,
this time with me. I really appreciate it. And we're going to be putting this out on some other things shortly because I'm starting another something new.
perfect.
But I really appreciate it, and it's been so awesome just to get to know you over these last couple months and learn about your story and the things that you have done. So I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate you spending this time with me.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share, and thank you for allowing me the space to
Yeah,
do it. And I think just to encourage anybody who's watching this, anybody who's listening to either snippets or clips
yeah,
or the entire broadcast of this, that just, right, it's the old Nike slogan of just do it,
yes,
of just pick what you want and go pursue it because it is accessible. The concepts in the book are going to help you, but the action relies on you. And the excuses, for the most part, are invalid. Their justification, right? Easy way for us to justify not taking action.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful life, and I'm grateful to be experiencing it the way that I am. And thank
yeah.
you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Derek.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone who joined. We appreciate you. Share, share, share this story. Everybody needs to get these books and connect with Derek when you can. We'll see you all next time. Bye. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I am so excited to connect with you guys about this other book.